A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam & Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. Unfortunately, I am once again guestless. Life is still utter chaos. I'm actually taking the show several hours earlier than I normally do. I can't ask anybody to get up at 6:30 Eastern time to join me for Cam & Company. That just would, A, not be really fair. B, I don't know what kind of response rate I would get to a request like that. So hopefully we'll be back to a normal schedule here in the next couple of days. Again, I really do appreciate all of the thoughts and prayers for Miss E. I won't get into it, but yeah, we're still dealing with some pretty serious health issues right now. And again, I just appreciate your patience and your thoughts and your prayers as well. So before we get to today's topics of conversation, let's talk about this for just a second. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit your IRA and 401k hard. With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it is no wonder that central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't thought about gold yet, now's the time. Trust Priority Gold to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Text GOLD into 800-405-GOLD for a free gold info guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD. So it was a busy weekend. You know, up in Boston, they had the big Take Back Our 2A rally on Boston Common. Interesting to note that while Boston City Council members were requesting an increased police presence at a couple of the parades and celebrations that were taking place in Boston, I didn't see any request for more cops needed at Boston Common because the hundreds of gun owners were going to be showing up there exercising their Second Amendment rights. And sure enough, the rally went off without incident. Nobody was harmed. Nobody was hurt. Well, except for people's Second Amendment rights. But that's why folks were rallying in the first place. There was no violence when you had, again, hundreds of lawful gun owners assembled there in Boston Common, unlike what we have seen at other recent gatherings in Boston. There was a shooting 2 weekends ago at a Dominican festival. No licensed gun owners arrested for that crime, by the way. And yet, Chapter 35, the new gun control law in Massachusetts that gun owners were objecting to on Boston Common over the weekend, is aimed almost exclusively at people who legally and lawfully are exercising their Second Amendment rights. That's who this law puts the screws to, not the violent criminals who are preying on their own communities and neighboring communities, not the repeat offenders who time and time again are caught, only to be let go and then rearrested, right? No, they're not really even a subject, right? Because they're not going to follow the training mandates that are in place. They're not going to follow the licensing laws. They're not going to pay any attention to the sweeping gun bans that are included as part of Chapter 35 anymore, quite frankly, than the state of Massachusetts is paying attention to the deadline set down in this very piece of legislation, right? They're already playing fast and loose. Well, we know it said the effective date was, August, but we're going to push it back to October 24th. And, if we're not done, then we'll probably push it back a little bit further. It is insane how this law came together. It is insane how this law is being enforced. And I am so glad that we had gun owners show up at Boston Common. I wish that there had been more of them, to be honest. It would have been great to have seen the sort of a replica of what we saw in Virginia in January of 2020, when Democrats, a couple of months after Democrats took complete control of state government, at the Virginia Citizens Defense League's lobby day, we had somewhere between 30 to 50,000 gun owners show up in downtown Richmond. I was among them, and it was an incredible moment. And I would have loved to have seen that replicated in Massachusetts, but A, I'm not sure that gun owners really understand the dangers here. B, this is a rally that took place after the bill became law, right? House 4885 is now Chapter 35 of the Massachusetts gun laws. So that may have depressed a little bit of turnout. But also, I get the sense that there are, for every invigorated and active gun owner who is ready to defend their Second Amendment rights, there are probably 3 or 4 gun owners in Massachusetts who either A, aren't really aware of what's going on, or B, are so beat down that they don't believe that any change is possible. And that's something that Second Amendment advocates in Massachusetts have had to wrestle with in the past, but they're really going to have to wrestle with it now. Yes, we've got litigation underway to try to undo Chapter 35 in the courts, but there is also this referendum that is soon to be underway. And it's going to take, we're on the clock here. It's, I think, about 6 weeks to gather almost 50,000 signatures to put a repeal of Chapter 35 on the ballot in November of 2026. I think it can be done. Certainly there are enough gun owners in the state of Massachusetts to make that possible. But, again, it looks like it's going to be a little bit harder to reach some of these gun owners than what we may have been anticipating. So we'll be talking more about that on the program later this week. Also, over the weekend, actually this was on Friday, you had the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals uphold Maryland's handgun qualification license. Now, this is, in effect, a 30-day waiting period before you can purchase a firearm. It's actually a little bit more than 30 days, because before you can buy a handgun in Maryland, in fact, before you can even possess a handgun, you don't have to purchase one. If you want to go to a gun store and you want to rent a handgun, if you want to borrow one from your friend or from your family member, you have to have this handgun qualification license in hand. Otherwise, you are committing a crime. You could go to prison. And in order to get that handgun qualification license, you have to A, take a training course that includes live fire training. You have to be fingerprinted, and you have to submit your application to the Maryland State Police. And the Maryland State Police has 30 days to approve or deny that handgun qualification license, which again allows you, which permits you to possess a handgun in your home or at a range. You need an entirely separate license in order for you to carry that handgun on the street. Now, if you look back in history, there aren't a lot of analogs here. In fact, I would argue that there aren't really any analogs that say, okay, if you're trying to exercise your right to keep your arms, well, you're just going to have to cool your jets for a month. And the Fourth Circuit kind of got around that. They say, well, we don't really need to look for any analogs. It's not necessary, because your right to keep and bear arms isn't really being implicated by this 30-day wait. You're not being deprived of your right to keep and bear arms. You can exercise your right. You just have to wait a little bit. And they said, Fourth Circuit did, that in Bruin, the Supreme Court, in essence, gave the thumbs up to any licensing regime. Now, that's not the case, right? Bruin was about concealed carry. And what the court said is that shall issue concealed carry licensing laws are presumptively constitutional, although the court did note that if there are lengthy delays, there are excessive fees being charged, that even shall issue systems may become unconstitutional. The Fourth Circuit took that language and basically ran roughshod over the Bruin decision, claiming far more than what it actually said. So the Fourth Circuit never got into the question of whether or not there are historical analogs that would justify this modern prohibition. And I think the reason is because they aren't there. So they figured out a way to dodge the Bruin test by again asserting that your right to keep and bear arms can be subject to a month-long wait without your right to keep and bear arms being called into question at all. Now, we've heard the Supreme Court say that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. Do you have to wait 30 days to buy a book? Do you have to wait 30 days and get the government's permission before you can attend the church or the synagogue of your choice? No. Do you have to wait 30 days after you cross over a state line before your Fourth Amendment rights are secured? Of course not. Nope. It's only when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms that we are subject to these types of restrictions. And I would argue, and I hope that this case is going to get appealed up to the Supreme Court, but I would argue that the Second Amendment is being treated as a second-class right when you have to jump through all of these hoops and hurdles, when you have to navigate this maze of red tape before you can so much as possess a firearm in your home. Fourth Circuit, of course, also recently upheld Maryland's ban on so-called assault weapons, ruling that AR-15s and other modern sporting rifles are like machine guns. They are dangerously unusual. Therefore, they too fall outside of the scope of the Second Amendment's protections. That case, well, we don't know that the court is going to take the case, but the cert petitions have been filed, and the justices will consider. It was Bianchi versus Brown, but I guess Dominic Bianchi has moved away from Maryland, so he's no longer the named plaintiff in this case. It's now Snope versus Brown. They will consider that in conference this fall. I don't know if it's going to be their first conference when they get back in late September, if it's going to be October before they get to this, but there are a lot of abuses from Maryland that could soon be before the Supreme Court. I don't know that it's likely they're going to take both of those cases. I mean, again, the court only hears about 1 in every 10,000 cases that get up to SCOTUS, so it'd be exceedingly unlikely that both of these Fourth Circuit decisions get Supreme Court review, but I'd say SCOTUS review is warranted in both of these cases, to be sure. All right, moving on to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. Let's start there with a story out of Chicago. Not a true recidivist report, but it is one of those, what the heck are they thinking sentences? This is from CWB Chicago. Former CTA bus driver gets probation for shooting another car during a road rage incident on the Kennedy Expressway. Now, when I saw this, I thought, okay, well, maybe there was an element of self-defense. And prosecutors felt like, yeah, we want to charge them, but we don't think we can get a conviction, so let's just give them a plea deal, we'll get probation, we'll, pad our stats. And that doesn't sound like that is what happened at all here. According to CWB Chicago, 44-year-old Brandy Jolivet faced 2 counts of attempted murder originally. The prosecutors dropped those charges in a deal, and Jolivet ended up pleading guilty to aggravated discharge of a firearm towards an occupied vehicle as well as reckless discharge of a firearm. Prosecutors said that Jolivet, who was working for CTA, Chicago Transit Authority, at the time, but was off duty, became angry because another driver wouldn't let her into his lane. That driver, a 55-year-old man, said that he saw Jolivet's red Mercedes SUV driving erratically as it approached him from behind. It was weaving in and out of traffic and then trying to cut him off when he wouldn't let her merge. As she got close, the man heard her yell, bitch, and then heard a popping sound, and his rear window shattered. The victim then pulled over, called police. Investigators said that they did find a bullet hole in the man's rear window, the bullet grazing a headrest in the rear seat and then grazed another headrest before falling to the floor. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but the driver very easily could have been. Police were able to track down the Mercedes using license plate readers and video footage. They contacted its owner, who's Jolivet's husband. He told investigators that she was the one behind the wheel. In an interview with police before she was officially charged, Jolivet allegedly told officers that she was waving a gun around, but not shooting it. So, no real element of self-defense here. It's not like the 55-year-old man was the initial aggressor. Sounds like he was just trying to get to where he needed to be, and all of a sudden shots were fired at him. But yet prosecutors, again, dropped the most serious charges. And Judge Nira Wall sentenced Jolivet to 4 years of probation, 30 hours of community service, and she's free and clear to go, which is absolutely amazing to me. Again, Illinois has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. And yet what we see time and time again is that individuals who are arrested and charged with committing violent crimes, right? Not nonviolent possessory offenses like possessing a firearm without a void card or carrying a pistol without a concealed carry license, but actually shooting at somebody. They're walking away with probation, a slap on the wrist. And then politicians in Illinois complain that their gun laws aren't doing enough. Well, no. The gun laws are doing too much. It's the criminal justice system that is not doing enough to stop or to provide consequences to these violent offenders. All right, on to today's Armed Citizen story with the rather anodyne headline, Man Shoots, Kills Intruder in Self-Defense. This was in Scott City, Missouri on Saturday afternoon. We don't have a ton of information about this, but according to police, it was broad daylight at 2:45 in the afternoon. They got a call about a burglary in progress. Now, by the time they arrived, that burglary in progress had turned into a shooting. The homeowner called 911 to report that somebody had kicked in his back door, which is when he shot the intruder. When officers arrived, the homeowner took him to the scene. The intruder was still there. Officers began life-saving measures along with other first responders. The suspect, identified as Jason Vermillion of Scott City, he was taken to a hospital in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, but passed away a short time later. According to investigators, again, the homeowner said he heard his back door being forced open, which is when he confronted the intruder. He told investigators he was forced to defend himself with a handgun. Scott City Police Chief Christopher Griggs says his department is not seeking charges against the homeowner, saying that the homeowner acted in self-defense, was protecting both himself and his property. Again, we don't know why the suspect in this case targeted this particular home, if the suspect and the victim knew each other. But what we do know, again, is that the homeowner not facing any charges after protecting his life there on Saturday afternoon. And finally today, our good deed of the day, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. A resident in Los Angeles who saved a little girl from an attempted kidnapping. Boy, it seems like we've seen a lot of these types of stories, right? I said Los Angeles. This is actually Santa Monica, L.A. County, but Santa Monica City. And there is an element of a recidivist report to this story as well, because the suspect in this case, well known to police. This was back on August 21st, just before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Santa Monica police responded to a call about a suspicious individual. When they got there, they discovered that there was a child who was helping a neighbor put their pets into a vehicle. When a stranger approached, a woman, grabbed the child. Now, the neighbor quickly got the child away from the woman and locked the little girl in his truck. That's when the woman pulled out a knife and was pulling on the door, trying to get the child locked inside, who was locked inside the truck. According to police, both police were able to flee the scene without physical harm, but the neighbor kind of followed the woman. She apparently fled the scene to a nearby store parking lot, and that's where deputies arrived, and they found her. They arrested the 39-year-old woman, later identified as Courtney Perrone, on felony charges for attempting to kidnap the 8-year-old girl, as well as assault charges for going after the man who was protecting the child. The adult victim in this case, the guy who had the knife pulled on him, told reporters that the woman was saying she was Russian police, acting as if she had a legitimate reason to take the child. And according to L.A. District Attorney George Gascon, not one of my favorite prosecutors out there, he noted that she has an extensive criminal history across state lines. On August 10th, so just a few days before this most recent incident, she was arrested by the LAPD on felony charges, was released, though, by a peace officer on August 13th for, quote, insufficient complaint. Last November, Perrone was also picked up by the L.A. Sheriff's Office for a charge that has not been at least publicly detailed. Was given a citation and was released once again. Now she's facing some pretty serious charges. Sounds like there is enough information to make that complaint official. But what happens when Gascon prosecutes this woman? Very much an open question. But to the neighbor in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to save both himself and this little girl, tip of the hat, and thank you for your very, very good deed. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. I am looking forward to, knock on wood, being back with you again tomorrow with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information. But I would encourage you to check out bearingarms.com throughout the day. We're keeping you up to date on everything going on with your right to keep and bear arms, litigation, legislation, regulation, the cultural attack on gun ownership, and our Second Amendment rights. It's all waiting for you there at bearingarms.com. If you like what you see, also encourage you to become a VIP or VIP Gold member. You'll get exclusive content and ad-free experience, and you'll also be supporting the independent pro-Second Amendment journalism that we're doing at Bearing Arms. And in this day and age of big tech censorship and media bias, which is something else that I'm talking about at Bearing Arms today, your support is critically important. So thank you again. Please keep those thoughts and prayers coming. I I look forward to being back with you again here very soon. Until then, be well. Be safe.